Great. Sorry. Appreciate everyone's patience this evening as we are getting started. But good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's virtual town hall hosted by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. We should be joined by a very special guest, State Senator Lydia Edwards, momentarily. But my name is Eric White. I have the honor to serve as the District Director for Congresswoman Pressley here in the Boston office. And before I turn it over to our Senator and Congresswoman, I want to thank Dieter and Brendan from MAPA Translations for joining us and ask them to let folks know how they can access Spanish translation if helpful.
Muchas gracias por la invitación. Buenas noches para todas las personas hispanohablantes. Estamos listos para la reunión en el ayuntamiento de esta noche, en una reunión virtual. El ayuntamiento está siendo presidida por la representante de la República Ayanna Pressley del séptimo distrito. Estaremos listos para estas personas que necesiten ayuda. En la parte inferior encontrarán un icono donde encontrarán la parte de dirigirse al salón donde estaremos interpretando. Simplemente darse el clic en la parte de español y los dirigirá directamente al salón donde estamos nosotros para prestarles este servicio. De nuevo, buenas noches y bienvenidos a esta reunión virtual en el ayuntamiento de la ciudad. Gracias.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate everyone's patience as we were getting started. I do want to just make a quick note. If you need any assistance from our district office, you can go to presley.house.gov or you can call our office directly at 617-850-0040, and I will share that again at the end of tonight's town hall. But I will pass it over to our Congresswoman to give us a quick update as we get started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Eric. And thank you all for joining us for our monthly virtual town hall. I know we will imminently be joined by my sister in service, who I had the pleasure and honor of serving with on the Boston City Council on workers' rights, housing justice, so many other issues. And now I get to work with her as a state senator, and she'll be joining us shortly to provide a state house update. But I wanted to just begin by letting you know in response to some of the more pressing issues that are on your mind, just some of the issues that we've been tackling and also what we've been doing in district and in community. And so over the last couple of weeks, my team and I have been in community for our in-district work period. In fact, last week we were in the town of Randolph celebrating the $1 million in federal funds that my team and I secured as part of the annual budget bill recently signed into law by President Biden. Now, these funds will be used to support the construction of a brand new state-of-the-art community health center at Randolph High School and will help address the healthcare barriers faced by Randolph students. In my time on the Boston City Council, I championed the expansion of more school-based health centers. So it is incredible to be able to deliver these federal funds to create a brick and mortar school-based health center, which is so critical to the health of our students, but also their readiness to learn. And the best thing about this $1 million investment to build a school-based health center in Randolph High School is that this was a community-driven project with the help of residents of Randolph. And it was something that was government invested and endorsed. And those are the best kind of partnerships, those things that are community-driven, government endorsed and invested in. And so this was a community-driven project, a testament to the leadership of my colleagues in government, but really the residents of Randolph who recognized how the dire need for these critical healthcare services to move us closer to a more just and equitable pandemic recovery and beyond. Since we convened last month in Washington, we have had an action-packed month, including the historic confirmation of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, truly a momentous occasion and reminder that Black women belong in every room and at every table where decisions are being made. As the next steps with Justice Breyer's retirement scheduled to occur at the end of the current Supreme Court term. Justice Jackson will be formally sworn in and take her seat on the bench this summer. It was truly an honor to be in the room during these Senate confirmation hearings. And then after the Senate confirmation vote to celebrate on the south lawn of the White House. Back to legislative matters. In the House, we also took historic action to pass the Crown Act, legislation I'm proud to co-lead with my colleague and friend, Representative Watson Coleman, to bring an end to race-based hair discrimination at the federal level. Now, yes, you heard that right. In 2002, Black Americans, particularly Black women, continue to be discriminated against and criminalized simply for the way that our hair naturally grows out of our head and the way that we show up in the world. In fact, for those of you that are newer to this issue, studies have found that Black women are nearly 2 times more likely to be sent home from their workplace because of their hair. And for Black girls in schools, hair discrimination is happening as early as kindergarten. Now, the Commonwealth is certainly not immune to these egregious practices. One case made headlines as 2 twin sisters, Deanna and Maya, high school students in Malden, were disciplined for showing up with braids. They were given numerous detentions, kicked off the track team, banned from prom solely for their hairstyle. I remember when this happened, I was serving on the city council at the time, and I remember the sisters saying that they were being judged more for their heritage than their honor roll, their scholarship. So the Crown Act would prohibit this type of race-based hair discrimination in federal law. And I was proud to help pass this bill, and we need the Senate to act and to act quickly. Additionally, in the space of legislative progress, the House took much needed action to replenish the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, a critical lifeline for many of our smallest restaurants and restaurant workers who continue to be impacted by the financial toll of this pandemic. It's important that we leave no one behind as we begin to head into a recovery from this pandemic-induced recession. And that is why I've been proud to champion our micro businesses and in particular our restaurants who are critical and social economic anchors. This is an issue I've continued to hear from local restaurateurs across our district, and for months I've been pushing for action. You know, that the forecast and the future for many of them looks very grim without robust federal support. And that's why earlier this year, I led the entire Massachusetts delegation in the House to urge congressional leadership to restore funding to this program. So I was proud to help pass the Relief for Restaurants and Other Hard-Hit Small Businesses Act in the House. Now, this bill will provide an additional $42 billion, that's with a B, in funding for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, which will help ensure that hundreds of thousands of eligible restaurants can have access to funding to keep their workers employed and to continue serving our communities. This bill also provides $13 billion to support other hard-hit small businesses, providing relief for businesses with 200 or fewer employees that continue to be impacted during the pandemic. I've been in recent days in Roxbury and Dorchester and Somerville and Cambridge. And as I was in community talking to local restaurateurs, they reminded me we are still very much in a pandemic and we are still very much feeling the impact of this. And we are encouraged by the progress in the House, but the Senate must pass this bill and act so that they can get the critical relief that they are so in need of. In every room I'm in and every virtual table that I am at, I continue to hear from individuals and families that are struggling to get back on their feet after the unprecedented trauma and grief of the last 2 years. Small business owners, workers, and families who are struggling to cover the skyrocketing cost of housing, transportation, and childcare. It continues to be my mission to ensure that our hardest hit communities get the resources necessary to get back on track and lay the groundwork for a just and equitable long-term recovery. And with that, if the senator has joined us, I'll be happy to turn it over to her for, oh, there she is, for a State House update.
Thank you all, and I apologize for the slight delay and for the screen. I dropped my phone, so I was trying to get on my laptop. But it is one of those days, and I'm still honored to be here with my former sister, well, my forever sister in solidarity, and my former city councilor sister, but now my Congresswoman, Ayanna Pressley. I just have to say, to see your growth, to see your light shine, and for the nation to know how powerful it is, and to be only inspired by it is something I'm just honored to have been alive for. Honestly, Ayanna, I don't think you understand. That saying that by you shining your light, you give permission for others to shine theirs. And I have to say, for many people who don't know, Ayanna was the first woman of color on the city council. And I, of course, myself, Kim, Anissa, Michelle, so many of us today, Kendra, I'm forgetting the names because that's how many of us have followed behind you. And look where we are going. I'm now the senator for the 1st Suffolk and Middlesex. I'm the first woman, first person of color to represent this amazing district. And I just wanted to say thank you for shining your light and reminding us to continue to shine ours. I wanted to just give some very brief updates about what we're doing in terms of the State House and talk about some things that are pending as well. Yes, we passed a Crown Act in the Senate here, unanimously in the House and the Senate. And what that means now is it's going to the desk, or it's going to conference. So what that means is the 2 different versions, very slight differences, will be conferenced out and sent to the governor's desk, and we expect him to sign it. And if he doesn't, well, because we're unanimous, we have a veto-proof majority, the Crown Act will pass and become law in Massachusetts, is what I'm trying to say. Another act that a lot of people have been writing about and very excited for is the Driving Mobility Act, which is for driver's licenses for those who are undocumented in Massachusetts. And that is now pending in the Senate. The House has passed it. I expect my colleagues to be part of the historic movement to make sure that all people feel that they can drive their children to school, drive to go to doctor's appointments, and feel that they're not targeted by something that they cannot control. So I'm very excited about that, and I look forward to that vote happening. I can't give you an exact date, but I expect that we will be doing that. In terms of other moments, we are in an interesting moment right now where we have, as the Congresswoman mentioned, a great deal of income disparity, but we also have an infusion of federal dollars. And so we are sitting here at a moment, I think, an incredible opportunity to invest in our people, in our infrastructure, in our schools. And that's where a lot of our debate is coming down to. The House has now released their budget, and they're going to go into it extremely. It'll be an intense couple of months. The Senate will have the budget shortly after that. And we're looking at all things, new ferry systems, new electrification for our commuter rails. We're looking at massive investment in mental health and substance abuse prevention. We're looking at also our schools and trying honestly to prevent. I am trying absolutely, and I know many of us in the delegation are preventing at all costs receivership, but really understanding that this is a moment for us to double down and give more, and to our teachers and to our students as a form of healing. Education shouldn't be traumatic. And as the Congresswoman had mentioned, for many people, going to a Zoom or dealing with this moment was a trauma that we still need to invest in healing. I also am very excited to note that along with a lot of those different components, we are moving in such an aggressive way for electrification, and making our future greener than it's ever been before. We expect that there will be, as part of our laws, prohibiting gas guzzling cars by as early as 2030 in the sale of them. We're looking at school buses becoming electric. We're looking at all different ways in which we can move towards electricity. And so those things are going to be vital for our infrastructure so we can truly take off in a green economy. And finally, I just want to say that we haven't forgotten about the call for action and for accountability, and for making sure that the state is dealing with police and an over enforcement of Black and Brown communities. On 2 fronts, I want to give credit to to Senator Chang Diaz in a massive new infusion of cannabis 2.0, and dealing with that and making sure that the funds are there, $20 million a year almost, to make sure that our businesses that are from Black and Brown and formerly incarcerated communities because of the war on drugs are invested in. And then the other component is making sure that the post is up and running, and that we are holding police officers accountable for when they do commit crimes or when they do commit infractions, and making sure that that is becoming part of the regular culture, is that accountability is normal. So a lot of the police departments are submitting their reports, which is what was the required first step, to make sure that we're all monitoring and understanding who are the bad actors and who are the good actors. So that was a lot, but I want you to know that I'm beyond excited to be in the Senate fighting for those issues. And I'm just, again, honored to be here tonight to be part of any conversation with a Congresswoman. So I think I'm going to pass it over to Eric, who will, I think, do some of the Q&A.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Senator. Really appreciate you joining tonight. And thank you for fighting through the tech issues. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining tonight, and to those who have pre-submitted questions for tonight's town hall. Unfortunately, we will not be able to answer all the questions live, but our staff will be following up with everyone who submits a question both before the town hall and during. So we will jump right in. Our first question comes from Wendy in Alston. Wendy asks, what can we do at the state or federal level to ease housing costs for renters? It's out of control right now. I have friends whose leases have increased $500 to $1,000. Personally, mine has increased $200, and my landlord has removed certain perks to implicitly increase the cost outside of the confines of the lease, such as laundry. Utility bills are higher than ever, and we can't buy houses because the market is so inflated. It's likely I'll pay even more as a homeowner. Questions about renters and what we can do.
Thank you, Eric. And you know, I say that policy is my love language. Well, if policy is my love language, I know that's true for Senator Edwards, but housing policy is really something for her. I don't even know what's a step above a love language, Senator. Whatever that is, that's what housing policy is for you. I'll take a quick bite at this question, and then I'll turn it over to you, Senator. And if you would just also remind people of what your district includes. So that people can familiarize themselves with you in this new role. Thank you, Wendy, for this question. Housing is quite literally at the intersection of everything. It's a critical social determinant of health. It's critical for social and economic mobility. And as a result of the ongoing pandemic, conflict around the world, we're seeing record inflation, and housing is certainly no exception. So we're seeing landlords use inflation as cover to increase rents and profits, but in many cases, the rent increases are extremely high and unjustified. So if we don't act swiftly to protect tenants in the Massachusetts 7th, across our Commonwealth and our country, we'll continue to see more and more working families priced out of the rental market or faced increased rent burdens. So to address this issue in the short term, we need a short-term and we need a long-term solution. So in the long term, we simply have to increase the supply of affordable housing, include social housing. We also need to reform local zoning laws that make it difficult to build these types of affordable homes. I've been having that conversation with a lot of the mayors in the Massachusetts 7th. And then, you know, local and state leaders like Senator Edwards here have a critical role to play, but so does the federal government. We are certainly not off the hook. And so in the short term, we don't have time to wait to build new homes. And so one of the things that I've offered to get at this, I'm so sorry because my screen just went out on me, and I'm trying to honor my points so that I don't filibuster here. So what I'm going to do is just go right into talking about one of my bills, which is my HELP Act. And it is literal in that it is helping to keep tenants and safely housed. We know in my role in the Financial Services Committee that pre-pandemic, there were some 3.7 million eviction filings. And that has only increased during the pandemic. And, you know, I'm of the opinion that is a public health crisis within a public health crisis. Eviction is a policy choice, and a violent one at that. Housing is a fundamental human right. And people certainly should not be worrisome of facing eviction in the midst of an ongoing pandemic, no less. So my legislation would cut back and combat evictions and unjust evictions by ensuring that everyone has access to legal counsel, that also landlords are required to apprise tenants of their rights. We know if tenants do get to housing court, that the outcomes improve considerably when they do have legal counsel. And then this part of the bill, I think, is especially important, which is that we do not want evictions to be reflected on credit reports. This is a pandemic-induced recession. People are going to have their credit impacted through no fault of their own, and they should not be burdened by these errors for 7 years. And we know that your credit score is quite literally the passport for everything else. Employment, securing future housing. So that is the HELP Act, one piece of my broader housing policy agenda. And now I'm going to turn it over to Senator Edwards, while we'll see if these busy little tech devils that want to make things challenging this evening will corroborate in the next 5 seconds until we turn it back over to me. All right. Thank you so much. Take it away, Senator.
Thank you so much. So just to answer the first part, my district, thank you for reminding me, First Suffolk and Middlesex includes Winthrop, Revere, it includes Cambridge, Port, and then several neighborhoods in Boston, including that run the Greenway, basically. So you have Chinatown, the Leather District, Beacon Hill, the North End waterfront. And as the redistricting is happening, I will unfortunately have to say goodbye to Cambridge Port and Chinatown and the Leather District. And I will be picking up the Back Bay in Boston. And so my district right now goes between the 7th and 8th congressional districts. So I work with your sister in service, Representative Catherine Clark, for Winthrop and Revere, and then for all parts of Boston and Cambridge Port right now, I'm with my Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. So in terms of housing, I tried to think of a better word besides love language, maybe muse. I don't know.
Okay, yes.
Whatever, but either way, so there's a couple, as the Congresswoman said, there's two ways to deal with this, long-term and short-term. In terms of short-term, I think the most poignant and the most direct way of dealing with housing is through the zoning, as the Congresswoman mentioned, and every city should have a form of IDP, which is inclusionary development policy, so that anybody who chooses to build, buy, or create some form of living, shelter, anything in their city or town needs to have a goal that they must build affordable units. And cities without that are actually, I think, contributing to the problem. We're working on our first IDP policy ever in Revere's history. For example, they built 5,000 units in the last almost 5 to 7 years, and not one of them is affordable or required to be. So we know that just building alone doesn't actually work. You need to tell developers to build for the populations that they're choosing to purchase in. So that's the first with zoning and with local policies. Then you have to also deal with the fact that too many landlords have decided that housing is a form of price gouging and it's just a form of marketplaces. Well, we believe that housing is a human right. And so with human rights, your profit margins become less important. And so there is pending legislation. I have been a stalwart supporter of this. This is a local option for forms of rent control. I believe that every city and town has the recipe, the creativity to figure out what is best in a price point for that form of policy. I think the best one is actually stopping certain amounts of rent increases, so that we're not talking about a doubling of the rent or 10, 15, 20%. We're talking at max, whatever the city town thinks, 3 to 4, 5%. That's it. You also can then bring it over to the incentive side, which is another pending bill, which we unfortunately didn't get out of committee, but I'm still in the fight. And that is honestly offering tax incentives to landlords to keep their rents low. So if they're already housing you at a lower rent, if they're already housing a senior, if they're already housing you below market, then what's it to them to keep doing that? I think it's to offer them a small tax break. It's cheaper for us to offer that immediate tax break to the landlord if they keep their rents below market, than it is for us to try and find new housing for the senior, for the person who's just been paying rent but has no place to go. And we're going to lose a lot of young people, a lot of young families, a lot of people in general with incredible talent and creativity and futures to other states if we don't do something to keep them here. Of course, in terms of long term, we absolutely need to build more housing. It needs to be affordable and it needs to be by transit centers. So that is part of the housing choice bill that we did pass, and getting more cities and towns that have commuter rail stops to build big around transit hubs would be huge, and towards giving real options for people to be able to come in and out of cities. So ultimately, I know that was a little bit longer than 5 seconds. I'm going to hand it right back over to the Congresswoman, but it's my muse.
Okay, thank you, Senator, so much for that. And, you know, I would just add, as I said, housing is at the intersect of everything. Our goals around economic justice and climate justice and transportation justice. And, you know, I do support rent control. I wanted to just, you know, offer that. I always have. But in addition to that, we've got to address everything else happening in your life. And for me, that means, you know, universal pre-K, childcare, and universal pre-K. You know, we have the second highest cost of childcare in the country. It means making sure that everyone's working at a living wage. It means investing in public transit as the public good that it is. It means canceling student debt. You know, so all of these things work together. Okay, Eric, next question.
Great, yeah, thank you for that. The next question comes from Manley in Back Bay, who asked, with the Crown Act passing state and Congress, and once Governor Baker signs the bill, can this law be used in coordination with MCAT and EEOC and other civil rights, or is it a standalone act or bill in the best interest of Black and Brown communities? Additionally, what are some other ways that people can support the Crown Act at the federal, state, and local levels?
Okay, yeah, Manley, thank you so much for that question. And what we need in order to get this to be federal law is we need for the Senate to not obstruct progress and to act swiftly on this and so many other pieces of legislation of critical consequence to the Massachusetts 7th and beyond. And so we're calling on people to call their senators and urge them to support this legislation. And we have to keep the pressure up and force their hand to get this to the floor for a vote and passage. I do want to commend Senator Edwards and all those who played a role, the community and the residents of the Commonwealth most of all. It's been my experience, although I don't mean to give short shrift to the power of our roles, but you know, government doesn't always lead. It often responds. And that's why public pressure is so important. And I'm proud that Massachusetts became the 15th state in the country to pass the Crown Act. But we've still got work to do on the federal level so that access to these critical protections are not arbitrary, but that they are standardized. Regarding MCAD and EEOC, it seems to me that, again, this does fit under the guise of the advocacy of those offices and their interventions when someone does experience workplace discrimination. But I will turn it over to Senator Edwards to expound further upon that point or anything else that she wants to uplift on the state level regarding the Crown Act.
Thank you. Yes, so it is now part of the protected categories that someone could bring a claim to the MCAD. The MCAD is, for those who don't know, that's the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, and it applies to all employers of 6 or more folks. Unless you're a domestic worker, then you also can go to the MCAD if you're a nanny or house cleaner. The EEOC, however, does apply and does protect, but the question is whether the Crown Act is part of federal law or not. We're working on that, as you know. But even if it were to come under racial discrimination, you have to have 15 people or more, I believe, at the work site. So MCAD is still everyone's best bet in Massachusetts to enforce the Crown Act. And I think if anything, along with advocating, as the Congresswoman said, for the federal, we also need to make sure that we are, in general, just encouraging, loving, and treating Black women and their beautiful hair, no hair, with respect and love that they deserve. That's just a matter of just being decent.
Right. From the classroom to the workplace, everyone should be able to show up in the world fully, authentically, unapologetically as themselves, without fear of discrimination, or really any fear at all of anything. So, okay, next question.
Great. Next question comes from Edward in Mattapan, who asks, What are you doing to ensure that our government actually follows the science and not simply dismiss the fact that we are still in the midst of a pandemic? Additionally, can you share more about what inspired you to fight for those battling with long COVID?
Sure. Thank you so much, Edward. And you're absolutely right. We're still very much in the midst of the pandemic. And as I've said before, we may be tired of the pandemic and its impact on our public health, our quality of life, our peace of mind. We're tired of the pandemic, but the pandemic is not yet tired or through with us. So we have to remain vigilant. And I'm proud to share that I am vaccinated, I am boosted, and I encourage all of you to do the same. That is your best defense. As many of you probably heard earlier today, the newest variant is spreading quickly throughout the country. But remember, folks who are vaccinated are less likely to be hospitalized or seriously ill. They're rarely hospitalized. And again, they're less likely to be seriously ill. And additionally, you can still wear your mask indoors, on public transit, and anywhere else to reduce your risk of catching COVID. This is really the best way that we can protect ourselves and our neighbors who may be at autoimmune risk, have pre-existing conditions, and be vulnerable in that way. Now, so far as my colleagues in Congress and the responsibility of the federal government, I am right now in earnest fighting for another COVID package. One that will ensure that we have robust testing and vaccinations. And I'm fighting for resources for those who are long haulers, those with long-term sickness. And how did I come to this issue? I was meeting people in community who were sharing what they were struggling with. I was also seeing the community that was organizing online. And as someone who prides myself in championing those ignored, left out, and left behind, I wanted to be a champion for this growing community to ensure that it's not left behind when it comes to our public health response. And I reached out to the White House around data collection because I believe you can't manage what you don't know. And, I have been advocating and successful in getting data collection disaggregated, reported in real time during the pandemic to directly inform the marshaling of resources. So that was really a continuation of my work around data and federal resources. Then I had a roundtable with many people from the Massachusetts 7th who live with long haul symptoms, everything from cardiac events to mini strokes to suicide ideation to chronic fatigue to extreme pain. I heard from students who couldn't walk upstairs to their dorm room, couldn't get to class, mothers who had been seeing various doctors over many months and being told that their symptoms were imaginary. And what I want this community to know of long haulers is that I see you, that what you are experiencing is not imaginary. It is the pain you're experiencing is as real as you are, and you are deserving of a federal response. And so I'm very encouraged that the White House has rolled out their whole of government initiative to expand long COVID clinics through our VA system, to have multidisciplinary, evidence-based practices that are taking place there. And we'll be doing some data collection, there as well. I've introduced legislation to expand long COVID clinics through our healthcare providers, including like our community health centers, to ensure that anyone suffering will be able to access care in community, and that no one is denied treatment or forced to provide proof of testing positive for COVID, because what we found is that there are many people who are being denied insurance coverage or treatment because they tested prematurely or beyond their viral load, if you will. So that's what brought me to the work of long COVID. And I do want to say that the disability community early in the pandemic was sort of the canary in the coal mine, saying that this pandemic had the potential to be a mass disabling event. And it is disheartening that may very well be coming to pass, affecting members of our family, our community, our workforce, and again, just our public health writ large.
Great, thank you, Congresswoman. We'll move on to our next question, which is Michael from Everett, who asks, what are you doing to stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine?
Oh, thank you, Michael, for that question. You know, first and foremost, I've stood in solidarity and been in demonstrations and action with the Ukrainian community within the Massachusetts 7th, and also certainly continue to lift up and express a gratitude for the Russian civilians who are suffering under Putin's war as well, who are allies in this, and also you know, against what is happening, Putin's aggressive actions. And you know, there's just no doubt about it that Putin's war is an illegal war. It's an unjust war. His invasion is an attack on both our democracy and international law. And so I just continue to center the Ukrainian people on the ground here in the 7th, and again, to stand in solidarity with the Russian people that are protesting this invasion. And I've been, and I just want to ask people to please support the local Russian community who are also being impacted by this, where people are not supporting Russian businesses, or people are experiencing discrimination within our thriving Russian community within the Massachusetts 7th. So far as Ukrainian support in what I'm doing legislatively, I was proud to vote in support of billions of dollars of humanitarian aid to support the Ukrainian people and millions of refugees who need urgent relief. And my colleagues and I, we acted swiftly to urge the Biden administration to designate Ukraine for TPS and to immediately halt deportation and to accept Ukrainian refugees fleeing the war. And to hold Putin accountable, I've supported targeted sanctions. I serve on the Financial Services Committee, so this is something that we talk a great deal about. And I've supported targeted sanctions against him and oligarchs, Russian oligarchs. And I also voted to ban Russian oil and gas imports that are fueling Putin's war machine, and to suspend permanent, normal trade relations with Russia. On the issue of sanctions, as I close out my response here, I remain opposed to broad-based sanctions that will hurt innocent Russian people, like the thousands who have taken to the streets to protest Putin's war. So it's just really critical that we continue to respond with compassion to both the Ukrainian people here in the 7th and those in Ukraine who are experiencing immense trauma and pain and loss of life. And again, we must not forget our local Russian neighbors who are experiencing xenophobia and hate simply because they are Russian. I continue to have faith that diplomacy will prevail. I will urge President Biden to remain at the table and to negotiate an end to this conflict. This is about saving lives. This is, we can leave no stone unturned to avoid further escalation. And I'll add, if anyone here is directly impacted by the conflict or knows someone who is, my office stands ready to assist with any casework support. So you can call my Boston office, which is located in Hyde Park, at 617-850-0040, and a member of my staff will get back to you. And I know that that was a long answer, but I think it warranted that. And Michael, I thank you for the question.
Great. Thank you, Congresswoman. So we can move on to our next question, which comes from Oliver in Cambridge. Oliver asks, thank you for fighting to push President Biden to extend the pause on student loan payments. I'm barely staying afloat and have these payments to turn back on while we're still struggling to get on our feet would have been disastrous. What are you doing to keep the pressure for cancellation up? Because that seems to be the best solution here in Oliver's opinion.
Yeah, thank you, Oliver. And I welcome Senator Edwards weigh in on this if she just wants to wax poetic about the burden that is student debt. You know, Oliver, this is a nearly $2 trillion crisis affecting people from every walk of life. I continue to fight for broad-based student debt cancellation by executive action at $50,000. President Biden has the authority to do this, and given the challenge that we're facing and the polarization currently in Washington, the fact that this does not require one vote from Congress is exactly why I continue to advocate for broad-based student debt cancellation by executive action, the stroke of a pen, to alleviate this hardship that is burdening so many people. And we were successful during the pandemic. I led the fight in the House and worked closely with Leader Schumer and Senator Warren, and continue to, for a pause on student loan payments. And we have heard from so many people how impactful that pause has been, that it's allowed people to remain safely housed, to purchase essentials from diapers to groceries. Some people have even become first generation home buyers because of the money that they saved. And so if we see that just by doing this pause during the pandemic, the impact that it has had, imagine how transformational it will be for student debt to be canceled at $50,000 by executive action. It's an economic justice issue. It's a racial justice issue, given the disproportionate burden on Black and brown borrowers. And I would add, I think it's an effective strategy tool to ensure that we have a robust recovery from this pandemic-induced recession. And I believe we are truly closer than ever before in getting this debt canceled. The momentum is on our side. There was a time when this was treated as a very radical, marginal issue. Some who thought that student debt cancellation would be regressive in impact. And so the fact that last month that I, along with Senator Warren, led a letter that secured 100 of our colleagues, including key members of congressional Democratic leadership. This is now our 5th organizing effort in Congress to push for President Biden to act on canceling student debt through executive action. And each of these letters matter because it shows growing momentum and support. When we organize, we win. Our movement is closer than ever before to getting this done. And so we're not going to stop, because we know that this is an issue of consequence for so many people.
I would only add simply, I'm one of those people. I'm sitting here paying for debt, paying off my student loans, and what we've seen in the system that we put in since 2007, the work your way out of it is a system that is not working. And many of us have done that work. We've done everything we can. We followed all the rules to find out that the rules were leading oftentimes to nowhere. There's so many different things, but everyone picking around the edges isn't doing it. Cancellation is the only thing that seems to actually bring about real relief. And that's something that I'm so excited and I'm so grateful for your leadership for, Congresswoman.
Thank you, Senator. And I mean, it's hard to believe, but I have 76-year-olds in the district that are still paying on student loans. And I'm sure since you're a little bit younger than me, that you often hear from your peers about their hesitancy to start a family, grow a family, an inability to start a business. This is really just choking at the promise of our communities in so many ways. Eric, next question.
Great. We'll do 2 more questions. I know we started a little bit late, so we'll do 2 more and then we'll do the closing. So we'll take one from Lily in Somerville, who says, thank you so much for all your advocacy to improve public and active transportation in our region. At this moment, what are your top 3 priorities for moving us towards a safe, reliable, zero carbon transportation system?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Little known fact, I co-chair the House Congressional Bike Caucus, and I'm also a founding member of the Future of Transportation Caucus, working with my colleagues, Representatives Takano and Garcia, for a more equitable and sustainable future of transportation. It is possible. It's also why I introduced, and I should say that the Future of Transportation Caucus, what we advocate is for federal funds to prioritize equity, accessibility, connectivity, and sustainability. We had some success in recent budgets to see those investments in public transit and multimodal infrastructure beyond just highways, roads, and bridges. And I'll continue to champion that on the federal level. I also introduced legislation with Senator Markey, the Freedom to Move Act, which would invest in fare, free transit efforts to allow as many people as possible to have the ability to get to where they need to go affordably and sustainability. I believe public transit is a public good and we should invest in it accordingly. And when we introduced this bill, the Freedom to Move Act, that's one of my favorite bill names. When we introduced this bill, many thought that it would never be possible to really build momentum behind the free transit movement. And it's incredible to see funding that we helped secure through the American Rescue Plan be used to bring free transit to life. And so we also need to invest in making transit more reliable and sustainable. This will enable us to lessen our carbon footprint, make our transportation more efficient, more accessible. And last but certainly not least, we need to finally invest in our public transportation systems in the way that we have invested in the expansion of our highways. The ongoing highway funding formula continues to prioritize highways over public transit systems. And this is an area, again, that we've made some gains in, but I'm going to continue to fight and to advocate for sustainable, reliable, affordable transit. And Senator Edwards, I don't know if there's anything that you want to lift up in terms of transit justice.
I think if anything, we are also using a lot of those funds to create a lot of infrastructure requiring certain quotas for EV parking through our, at least in the city of Boston, of course, in Cambridge, and making sure that we're building the infrastructure to meet the demand and to meet the requirements ultimately for electric vehicles. We just passed electrifying parts of the commuter rail system. So I would say along with everything, we need to make sure we're getting as electric as possible. We need to make sure it's free. And then we also need to make sure that we are building a safe roads for people to get on their bikes and feel that they can bike to school one day or bike to the grocery store.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, EV is on the minds of many. Eric, I think we had some constituents that were inquiring about that. So.
Yep, and so just a reminder, if you pre-submitted a question or asked a question in the chat, someone from our staff will be responding. We couldn't get to everyone's question tonight, but our last question for tonight comes from Melissa in Boston, who says, I am concerned about the future of reproductive rights and freedom in this country. The Supreme Court is likely to gut protections of Roe v. Wade, and more states are passing copycat bills like those in Texas to ban abortion altogether. What can be done at the federal and state level to make sure that abortion access continues to be protected as the human right that it is?
Yeah, bodily autonomy, reproductive freedom. These should be non-negotiables. And it is frightening that the gains that we've made are not guarantees and are being threatened and undermined on a daily basis. And it's a reminder that elections matter at every level of government, as we've seen these precise and draconian attacks against reproductive freedom, abortion care, and bodily autonomy truly for all. So, being from the Commonwealth, we may think we are immune to the impact of these harmful state bans that have been passing all over the country, but the fact is that that's just not the case. The spillover effects of these laws have really been chilling and are resulting in increased cases in surrounding states. But even here in the Commonwealth and in states like New York, earlier this month, I met with doctors providing abortion care from the Commonwealth, and they are providing more and more abortion from folks that are coming from out of state, which is adding, there's a residual effect here, a ripple effect, which is adding to backlog and wait times for folks needing abortion care or other health care. So abortion care is health care, and health care is a fundamental human right. I was an original co-sponsor of the Women's Health Protection Act. We need to get this signed into law. It passed the House. This bill would codify the right into federal law for patients to access abortion care and for physicians to provide this care without political interference of these harmful bans. So again, it would codify it and Roe v. Wade, and it would also stop the introduction of harmful state bans like what we have seen emerging throughout the country. And again, I was really proud to co-lead that bill with my colleague, Representative Judy Chu from California. I was devastated that the Jim Crow filibuster in the Senate stood in the way of us passing this piece of legislation, but we can't afford to give up. This is quite literally a matter of life and death. We know that these bans don't mean that people will stop having abortions. It just means that they won't do it safely. So this is a matter of life and death. I co-chair the Abortion Rights and Access Task Force under the Pro-Choice Caucus, and I'm just going to keep fighting. And so we also need to end this Jim Crow filibuster, again, which is obstructing progress at every single turn. And locally, we need to strengthen our investments in reproductive health care here in the Commonwealth. And I'll turn it over to Senator Edwards. She and I have stood on many of stage together in a virtual table around the issue of abortion care and reproductive freedom. And I would love to turn it over to her for her thoughts.
Thank you. On the state of Massachusetts, we are just excited that we actually passed the Roe Act, and it took an override and moving and organizing. So to all of you, I know who were there, who were calling to make sure that we got rid of draconian limitations on access to care, requiring young people to go to a judge, for example, requiring for parental permission to get those care. We got rid of those things in Massachusetts. And so now our focus is not only on making sure that law is enforced and put through, but also making sure that we have, and what we still need is comprehensive sex education in Massachusetts. We need to talk in scientific terms about what it means and how you get pregnant, talk about reproduction, talk about people's bodies, talk about what is going on. I think education is key, and I think most of us do, but we do not have a comprehensive, clear, unified understanding of even how to talk about sex in the Commonwealth for young people, and we need to be talking to them earlier. So there's different stages. Of course, ultimately, making sure that no matter what happens in Massachusetts or in the Supreme Court, that here access to all forms of medical care, including abortion, is something that we see as a human right.
Well, on that note, I'll just say I cannot wait until Justice Jackson officially takes the bench. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, in addition to the obstruction of the Jim Crow filibuster in the United States Senate, we have seen obstruction from the Supreme Court on everything from voting rights to reproductive justice to housing. They have obstructed the will of the people. The courts have been imbalanced, and it's critical that we have that balance and that fairness restored. And so I cannot wait until Justice Jackson takes the bench this fall. Senator, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And I want to thank everyone who took time out of your busy and demanding lives to join us for our monthly virtual town hall, and for bearing with us with those gnarly little tech challenges that showed up. I'm sorry we were not able to get to everyone's pre-submitted questions. I think there were two that we were unable to get to. We can certainly drop those answers into the chat, or you can, if you did not pre-submit a question and you asked a question in real time, we will certainly follow up. So be on the lookout for a response to that. And I hope you'll join us next month, when we'll have even more to report on. Again, thank you all. And don't forget that although I work in Washington, I'm not confused about who I work for. And that is the people of the Massachusetts 7th, which is majority parts Boston, Cambridge, all of Somerville, Randolph, Everett, Chelsea, and Milton. This is a vibrant, diverse, and dynamic district, and that has everything to do with each and every one of you. And please know that if you ever have a need, a constituent service need, or want to know how to connect to federal resources that you might be eligible for, you can call my district office at 617-850-0040. My staff stands ready to assist you. You can also reach us at Pressley, PRESSLEY.house.gov. And I look forward to seeing everyone in person real soon. Stay safe, stay healthy, And I also want to say thank you to our interpreters who hang in there with us. You know, Lydia, we speak pretty quickly, but Lydia, he's used to that. And so I think he was keeping up. So we thank you for that. And until next time, everyone, have a good evening.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.